Gentlemen, and welcome again to Syriana Analysis. I'm your host, Kevork Almassian. Thank you very much for tuning in to today's live stream. I appreciate you all, whether you're watching this stream on YouTube, on Rumble, or on Ganjin Word. There is no sound from the source. I have downloaded these videos from viori.com, which I got the license, and I'm able to use footage from all around the world, basically, especially when it comes to our everyday geopolitical conflicts, meetings, conferences, peace, war, etc. Before I start this stream, I just want to make a little statement. A few weeks ago, I received an invitation from a university to give a lecture about the future of the Syrian Armenians after the regime change. So the invitation was given to me because they thought that I have an expertise in this case. Otherwise, I wouldn't have been invited to give a lecture in a university. Once they publicized this event, they received a backlash, and their office was bombarded with emails and phone calls, basically asking them to reconsider the invitation, because the argument is I'm a far right. Now, I received an email from YouTube which says I have posted over 1,000 videos on this YouTube channel, and which means I have posted hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of video footage on this YouTube channel. So if anyone wants to evaluate my personal opinions and my personal thoughts when it comes to different geopolitical conflicts, he or she is perfectly able to, I'm sure most people have the intellect to watch and understand videos and podcasts and long formats, and they can judge themselves. So whoever is trying to, under the table, sabotage any event that I may have participated or I may participate in the future, I think this only shows the truth about this person and the group of people who tried to and successfully canceled the event, which I canceled it because I don't want to bring any headaches for myself and for the university itself. And I am in no way or shape want to justify myself or defend myself against such absurd accusations, especially when the source of this accusation comes from Qatari-funded outlets. So I just want to say to the people watching this, be true to yourself and don't really care about what people say about you as long as you know who you are. I know that I'm not right-wing, and I know I'm not even close to far right. Therefore, I don't want to explain myself or justify myself or defend myself against accusations that are baseless. So I hope this small statement is enough for the people who sent me the invitation in the past. And I canceled my participation and my lecture, although I put efforts in the research, time, and energy. So despite that, I refuse to participate in this mainstream discussions, basically, which is focused on you're a right, you're a left, you're a centrist. Instead of talking about the arguments, they're just trying to label the other side with absurd accusations. That would be my statement, and that's that. Let's go back to the real radical right-wing, far-right, fascist organizations in the region, one of which is the organization which Jolani has come from, the Al-Qaeda offshoot in Syria, right? And this organization is now in power, and not only in power, they're being whitewashed, embraced by several Western governments. And now that Donald Trump is in Saudi Arabia, it is rumored that the Saudis are trying to mediate to organize a meeting between Donald Trump and Abu Muhammad al-Jolani. Donald Trump is the president who said in 2016 and 2015, during his first election campaign that Hillary Clinton and Barack Obama have created ISIS and Al-Qaeda. He was the one who accused Obama of arming these jihadists who formed the Al-Qaeda in Syria. And he said, those people want to fly planes into our buildings, etc., and so forth, right? So if these allegations and rumors are correct, this is going to be a very big scandal for Donald Trump himself. And this is going to be something that is, the damage is going to be, you cannot really repair it, right? I'm going to discuss that for sure today. However, since you guys always asking me also about some Arabic reports, which I refer to usually in our streams, and I particularly speak about the role of Al Jazeera and the destruction of the role of Al Jazeera in the destruction of Arabic nations, I will ask you a simple question. When the 9/11 happened, before 9/11 and after 9/11, which TV outlet had the most access to Osama bin Laden? If you watch the interviews with Osama bin Laden and the statements, he either used to give the video statement to Al Jazeera, or one of the Al Jazeera journalists used to meet with Osama bin Laden and just, you know, wander in the beautiful mountains of Afghanistan without being detected, without being traced. In 2012, when Jabhat al-Nusra, the al-Nusra Front, the offshoot of Al-Qaeda in Syria, has declared its presence in the Syrian war, the first interview with Abu Muhammad al-Jolani, who founded the Al-Qaeda offshoot in Syria, and later rebranded his organization as HTS, and now he appointed himself as the president of Syria, the first interview he has given was to Al Jazeera, the Qatari-funded Al Jazeera. And back then, he wanted to hide his real identity. So he didn't show his face. So the camera was on his background like this. And why I'm going to show you this, because it's hilariously important. So this is one of the most famous journalists in Al Jazeera, and he is a notorious Muslim Brotherhood propagandist and ideologues. And he is a big supporter of Al-Qaeda. And he interviewed Al-Jolani. And Jolani has hidden himself and his identity in this interview. And I'm going to show you this interview because it's very important to understand what Jolani used to preach and how he mobilized basically tens of thousands of multinational Takfiri terrorists to join his group from the locals in Syria and from all around the world to fight alongside him against the Assad dictatorship and tyranny. And his rhetoric and literature was based on the premise that these old regimes in the region should be all removed through military force, right? And he said that his criticism to the Muslim Brotherhood is, or was, that they resorted to political activism instead of fighting against the old regimes militarily. And I'm going to, there is a, let's say there is direct translation from X, but I will definitely now try to translate you what he said. And this was his first interview, I believe in 2012 or 2013 on Al Jazeera. Let's take a look.
يهمني أن يسير المسلم عزيزا كريما ويعلم طريق الخلاص الذي يوصله. كل الحلول السياسية هذه حلول فاشلة لن تصل إلى.
So he says, it is important for me that the Muslim walks with dignity and knows how to reach his destination. All political solutions are failed. No solution can be reached.
لن تصل إلى حل.
Even Muslims who have given up their desire of going west.
الإخوان المسلمون الذين يعني رضخوا.
So he's criticizing here the Muslim Brotherhood and saying those who accepted the will of the West and they ask more than what they want from them. So he's criticizing the Muslim Brotherhood of Egypt back then, he says that they bowed to the demands of the Western governments. right? And he says Morsi even fought against the Mujahideen in Sinai. Mujahideen are the ISIS terrorists in Sinai.
حارب المجاهدين في سيناء ورضي باتفاقيات كامب ديفيد.
And he accepted the Camp David agreements. Those are all the words of Jolani, by the way, not my words.
التي كان ودخل في منظومة الأمم المتحدة ولم يحكم بشرع الله عز وجل وقبل بالبرلمان.
And he didn't rule by the rule of Allah or the law of Allah, and he accepted parliaments,
وقبل الانتخابات
elections, and everything America wants.
بكل ما تريده أمريكا. ثم ماذا كان الثمن؟ ليس السيسي هو من انقلب على.
So what was the price that he paid? Sisi has turned against him and he was ousted from power.
الأمريكان هم الذين انقلبوا على مرسي وأداتهم في هذا هو السيسي. ولذلك ليس هذا هو الطريق السليم ونحن كنا نأمل.
So in his view, the Muslim Brotherhood and Islamist parties in the region shouldn't resort to political activism and join the American approved type of governance, parliaments, democracy, elections, etc. We shouldn't do that, he says. Then we shouldn't join the UN system. We shouldn't be bowing and accepting American dictates in this case, right? And once Morsi accepted it, the Americans have turned against him and they brought Sisi to power, he says. We hope that one day Muslims will find out.
الأخوان المسلمين أن يصل يوم ويكتشفوا أن البرنامج الذي يسيرون عليه هو برنامج خاطئ. يجب أن يعودوا إلى أصولهم الأولى.
And he criticizes the Muslim Brotherhood, says, I hope the day comes when the Muslim Brotherhood understands the mistake that they have done and they would go back to their root. And the root is to carry arms and wage a jihad for God's sake. Right? Those are the words of Abu Muhammad al-Jolani in 2012. And this is how he mobilized tens of thousands of brainless takfiris from all around the world. He's doing now exactly what he criticized the Muslim Brotherhood for, right? And he monopolized the jihadi scene in Syria with this type of rhetoric that they're the true mujahideen and they will completely decouple themselves from this Western style governance and the democracy and elections and trying to appease the West and strike deals with Israel, normalize ties with Israel. Those are all the things that Jolani says he will fight when he comes to power. And that's why he's carrying arms alongside his terror army to destroy this Western approved type of governance in the Middle East. And he also said, and this is after he showed his face, his cute face to the world. In one of his videos, he says, we will not only reach Damascus, Jerusalem awaits us as well. So this is the type of rhetoric that these Islamists use to mobilize tens of thousands of people in the region, radicalize them and send them to their imminent deaths. And then when they come to power, they jump out of the train that they first used to reach to power, which is armed struggle. And once they come to power, now they want to be part of the system. Why I'm mentioning this? Because I always said these so-called Islamists, these takfiris, these Muslim Brotherhood types are the most hypocritical people you could ever meet in your life. I have never seen anything and anyone and any organization more hypocritical than them in the Middle East. They preach righteousness, but they do everything that is about evil and false. They're like false prophets, and they're preaching false prophecy for the people in the region, and they have the backing of strong powers in the region, financially and politically. Politically and ideologically, it's mostly Turkey, and then you have Qatar dumping billions of dollars into the pockets of this type of HTS type of groups and other Muslim Brotherhood groups in the region, and of course Saudi Arabia. And now those are the countries embracing Jolani in the region, not only embracing him, they're negotiating with the US to lift the sanctions against this regime after they weaponized these sanctions against Syria to demoralize the Syrian people, to completely impoverish the Syrian people, push them to the poverty line, below the poverty line, so they wouldn't have any moral capacity or strength to fight against this regime change war. And now all these people who imposed the sanctions in the US, in Europe, and they're mercenaries, Syrian mercenaries. Those are mercenaries who participated and drafted, and they lobbied to impose even more brutal sanctions on the Syrian people for political reasons to oust the former regime. Now they're the ones saying that these sanctions hurt the Syrian people. It's the same sanction. If the same sanction never hurt, have never hurt the Syrian people as they claimed, then why are they trying to lift these sanctions now if they never hurt the Syrian people? Because they knew well that these sanctions hurt the Syrian people, and that was the goal. The goal was to impoverish the Syrian people, push them below the poverty line, to demoralize them so they can win this regime change war. And now those are the same people telling us we need to lift the sanctions because they hurt the Syrian people and we have to be, yes, I agree. I agree. I don't want for the sanctions to stay on the Syrian people because the sanctions imposed are on the energy sector, on the health sector, on the educational sector, on every sector. Once you remove a country from the SWIFT, once you impose draconian sanctions that this country cannot make any transactions, cannot buy equipment, cannot buy spare parts, cannot buy any equipment which they can repair, for example, water dams, or in buy new equipment for the hospital, then you're imposing sanctions on the Syrian people. So Jolani, who says he will not stop in Damascus, but they will go to Jerusalem, he didn't tell us how he is planning on going to Jerusalem. He is going to Jerusalem as a normalizer with the Zionist state. Not as a liberator, he's going there as a normalizer of the Zionist state. And recently, Haaretz has dropped this bombshell report, basically, telling us Syrian officials visited Israel in April, opening direct UAE-mediated back channel, sources say. And those sources are Syrian sources, telling this to Haaretz. Syrian officials visited Israel in April to meet with Israeli defense officials after Israel opened a direct line of communication with Abu Muhammad al-Jolani's new regime. I refuse to use his so-called political name, Ahmad al-Shara. He is still Abu Muhammad al-Jolani. The Syrian delegation, reportedly composed of officials from the Quneitra province and one senior defense official, secretly visited Israel for several days at the end of April, according to separate Syrian sources. The back channel between Syria and Israel was facilitated by the United Arab Emirates. 3 people familiar with the matter told Reuters. The contacts are reportedly focused on security and intelligence matters, as well as confidence building between the two states with no official relations. In April, the new Syrian administration, look, even the Israeli press, they call it an administration, but the former one was always a regime, right? Assad regime, but then we have the Jolani administration. They signaled a major shift in its stance towards Israel, stating it would not allow Syria to become a source of threat to any party, including Israel. The letter sent as part of negotiations for potential US sanctions relief also outlined steps Damascus has taken to adhere to the 8 conditions the US put forth in March, including the formation of a committee to monitor Palestinian militant activities and the commitment to curb armed factions operating outside state control. Days after the letter was sent, Syrian authorities, so Jolani's security apparatus, detained 2 Palestinian leaders of Islamic Jihad, further fueling Palestinian and regional outrage over Syria's perceived move toward normalization with Israel. I would be very interested now to listen the thoughts of the experts who have been adamantly and consistently championing the Palestinians after October 7 and use the suffering of the Palestinians for clicks, for subscriptions, for begging for money from the people and support, basically, and make a brand and fame from the suffering of the Palestinian people. And then they jump the wagon of Jolani and claiming that this will be for the interests of the Palestinians, and they fooled everyone online with very sneaky approaches, and they have manipulated the people and brainwashed them that the Assad regime was somehow the ally of Israel in the region, they completely flipped the realities and the facts, and now they are silent about this Jolani normalization of relations with Israel. At the time, Israel is still continuing its brutal onslaught against the Palestinians in the Gaza Strip. I don't know how they can really live, or how can they really justify their opinion now that Jolani openly says we are talking to the Israelis. They call Israel an Israel, because in the Arabic terminologies, when you say Israel, you're accepting or recognizing the legitimacy of the political entity of Israel. The previous regime used to say it's a Zionist entity, right? So even in the language and the terminologies, everything indicate that Jolani and Israel are going to normalize ties. And Israel will accept the Jolani regime, will accept the Jolani rule over Aleppo, Homs, Hama, and Idlib, and Damascus. But beyond Damascus, in the south, they will impose a demilitarized zone. And Jolani regime already accepted that. They will continue occupying the Mount Hermon and the Golan Heights, which Jolani already accepted. And he already said, I don't need this. Keep the Golan Heights, keep the hills for you. And we will also accept demilitarized zone. So what is the next step for Israel is to create a federal state. This is the bare minimum. They want to keep Jolani controlling this big mess of a jihadi scene in the country. They need someone like Jolani to at least try to keep this ticking bomb under certain control. We are talking about tens of thousands of people who can become suicide bombers, and they can drive suicide cars, right? Car bombs. So they need someone like Jolani to keep this very dangerous jihadi scene that they created in Syria under certain control. Aleppo, Idlib, Hama, Homs, and Damascus. South of Damascus, no go zone, no arms, no weapons, no military posts. Jolani said, okay, I'm a good boy, I accept that. No Golan Heights, no Mount of Hermon. I accept that, I'm a good boy. Not only that, I want to normalize ties with Israel. And not only that, I will arrest the Palestinian leadership in Damascus. What else do you want? Do you want me to seal the borders with Lebanon? I will seal the borders with Lebanon, so I cut the supply chains of Hezbollah. What else do you want? Do you want investments? Okay, American investments and American companies can take over our oil and gas fields in the eastern shore of the Euphrates. What else do you want? The Trump Tower? I can also build a Trump Tower. Like, I really don't have a trouser here, but it seems to me that the next offer will be Jolani is giving his trousers to the Americans. He completely stands naked in front of his American partners now. So, the Syrian self-appointed president, this is from the Times, Syrian leader offers Trump Ukraine-style minerals deal and tower in Damascus. Amazing. President Trump is planning to ease U.S. sanctions on Syria after overtures from Abu Muhammad Jolani, who has offered concessions, including access for American companies to exploit natural resources in a Ukrainian-style minerals deal. Jolani has even raised the possibility of a Trump Tower in Damascus, the Syrian capital, as part of his pitch to the U.S. president, although intermediaries thought to include senior figures in Saudi Arabia and Turkey. The Times was told of efforts to secure a meeting between Jolani, who remains designated a terrorist by the US, and Trump during his trip to Saudi Arabia this week. But the White House said on Monday night that no encounter was due to take place. So we don't know yet if they're going to meet, by the way, but this is widely reported by the Jolani minions and those who work for his PR team, right? Trump's advisors were said to be split about the wisdom of direct talks during Trump's packed schedule for his 3-day Middle East visit, which begins on Tuesday in Riyadh. Speaking at the White House shortly before his departure for Saudi Arabia, Trump said he was considering easing U.S. sanctions, which date back to the Assad regime and block Syria from trade and banking to give the country a fresh start. Jolani may offer to begin talks on joining the Abraham Accords, a set of deals to normalize relations between Arab nations and Israel already signed by the UAE and Bahrain. The Times has been told by security sources. He could be willing to create a demilitarized zone or to allow Israel to retain a security presence in southwestern Syria, where Israeli troops have created a buffer zone next to the Golan Heights, an area captured in 1967. The US under Trump recognized Israel's sovereignty over the Golan Heights in 2019. So if you see, this is the map of control over Syria, guys. Do you see this Damascus? From Damascus all the way north to Idlib and Aleppo, Israel doesn't mind if Jolani occupies this region. But here, south of Damascus to Sueda and Dara, this is going to be a demilitarized zone, which means Jolani will not be able to send troops and have military posts here. Israel will have an upper hand, including over Sueda. These are all deserts. It's uninhabited anyways here. And then you have the Kurds in the yellow area. They will have their autonomous region. And the Christians and the Alawites are probably going to be more in a federal system and have their certain level of autonomy in the coast here. And then the Druze in Sueda. Jolani is understood to have spoken to MBS, the Crown Prince of Saudi Arabia, about the possibility of a Trump meeting. However, there appears to be a split over it among senior Trump advisors. Tulsi Gabbard, Trump's director of national intelligence, is among those understood to remain wary, if not hostile, about the encounter and may try to prevent it. You're based if you are really trying to be against that, Tulsi. Another pro-Israel aide, Mike Waltz, the former national security advisor, now nominated as ambassador to the UN, is understood to have kept Trump from learning about the concessions Syria is willing to make before he was ousted last month. Others include Steve Witkoff, Trump's Middle East envoy, and he is thought to be more favorable of a thawing of relations with Syria, knowing how readily Trump will dispense with protocol and tradition to strike deals, and that US president prefers making money to making worse. So this could be the initial design of the Trump Tower, guys, in Damascus. And this is not published by some anonymous source. This is Radwan Ziadeh. He is a senior Syrian oppositionist in the US, so-called, all the fellow of Washington, D.C. Zionist-linked think tanks, basically. And he says that this is going to be the first design of Trump Tower in Damascus. So Syrians are finally free, guys, and they will have their Trump Tower, right? So congratulations, guys. Now you can finally enjoy your freedom. This is going to be, maybe it has, this Trump song, whatever, but they're creating AI footage about how the Trump Gold Hotel may look like in Damascus through some AI tools. I'm not sure if this is going to be materialized or not, but it's something worth noticing and showing to the people that this tower could be built soon in Damascus, that Jolani wants to, shake hands with Donald Trump. Donald Trump is now in Saudi Arabia, and I'm checking every moment if in news breaking, US President Donald Trump is expected to meet Syria's Jolani in Riyadh tomorrow, they say. So I just opened my X account, and this was the first news that came, and they say Trump may meet Jolani tomorrow. So we're definitely going to address that again tomorrow when they meet, and let's see what is going to be the outcome of that. But it seems that Donald Trump has been pressed by Turkey, Saudi Arabia, and Qatar to lift the American sanctions. And this is what he said in this case.
Thursday in Turkey. Don't underestimate Thursday in Turkey. President Erdogan is going to be a great host. And we are doing some work with him having to do with Syria, too, by the way. We're going to have to make a decision on the sanctions, which we may very well relieve. We may take them off of Syria because we want to give them a fresh start. But President Erdogan's asked me about that. Many people have asked me about that because the way we have them sanctioned, it doesn't really give them much of a start. So we want to see if we can help them out.
So Erdogan has spoken with Trump. I'm sure Tamim and also MBS have spoken with Trump. And to be honest with you, MBS and the Emiratis, they were also asking the US to lift the sanctions against Assad. And I think I'm not sure about this, but I believe that Bashar al-Assad, he probably also was waiting for Trump to come to power, that MBS and his friends in the UAE probably back then told him that with Trump, it's easier to lift the sanctions or ease the sanctions, and they have a huge friendship, big friendship with them, and they will invest a hell of a money, hundreds of billions of dollars, basically, between over $1.5 trillion between the UAE and Saudi Arabia in the US, right? So I'm sure asking to lift the sanctions on Syria from these powers wouldn't have been a major issue. But now that Assad is gone and you have Jolani in power, they are again doing the same thing. They want to lift the sanctions, they want to invest, they want to create business opportunities for the corporations. And all in all, I think the Gulf countries, they wouldn't really mind whether it was Assad or Jolani. They only want to keep the bare minimum of stability in the country and move on. So now this is an opportunity for Jolani to at least prove himself as not only a good boy to the Americans, but at least that he can deliver some of the promises that he made to the outside world. But the question is, do the so-called outside world and this so-called civilized world really care about the human rights situation in Syria? I don't think so. I don't think so. So what was the main difference or main differences between the Assad government and the Jolani regime? Are the human rights conditions better under Jolani? Are there no people dying because of their political opinion or for their religious affiliations? The onslaught continues under Jolani every day. So what is the difference between Assad and Jolani? In their eyes, these Islamist groups, there are few reasons. First reason is these so-called Islamist groups, they believe in a capitalist economy, which means they believe in bringing foreign investors in the country and not national economy. The Assad government relied on a national economy, which is self-sufficiency, everything you can produce by yourself. You have fuel, you have production, and you have food, which means you can survive under any circumstances. And that's why when the Americans imposed sanctions on Syria, it was not enough. So they sent their occupation forces to occupy the oil fields and the wheat fields, because sanctions alone were not enough, because Syria used to have national economy. They can produce, and they have food, and they have fuel. So you cannot suffocate them. That's why Turkey, under Erdogan, because he's a good boy for NATO, he went to Aleppo, he destroyed the industrial zones, he looted hundreds and hundreds of factories and transported them to Turkey with videos documented. So he destroys the national industrial base of Syria. And then the rest, all these jihadists already destroyed the rest. So they destroyed the national economy of Syria by destroying Aleppo's manufacturing base. The US imposed draconian sanctions on the Syrian economy. The US occupation forces occupied the oil fields and the wheat fields. So they basically hold you from your neck. You're done. This is how they did it. So now that Trump wants to give a fresh start, let's ask the question, who imposed these sanctions which impoverished the Syrian people to begin with? It was the Americans, right? So we have three explanations for this recent moves of Jolani. This is a page called Verity, which I found it interesting that they are analyzing by giving three narratives. Trump considers easing Syria sanctions. Narrative A: the diplomatic opening with Syria presents a unique opportunity to reshape regional dynamics and advance US interests, as a Trump-Jolani meeting could lead to significant breakthroughs in Middle East peace. The proposal offers substantial economic benefits, including energy exploitation rights and potential normalization with Israel, while helping to counter Iranian influence in the region. Narrative B: engaging with Jolani, who remains a US designated terrorist due to his Al Qaeda past, poses significant risks and could legitimize an unstable regime. The Syrian government has yet to demonstrate meaningful reform or compliance with US conditions, while violence against minority communities continues. The proposed business deals appear to be attempts to circumvent serious diplomatic and human rights concerns. Finally, pro-Palestine narrative. Damascus is pursuing normalization with a regime currently committing genocide so that Jolani can improve his image with the United States. Indeed, if Syria's jihadist leader makes peace with Israel, he is not only betraying the Palestinian cause, but also the Syrian people, who by large support Palestinians' right to resist occupation. Syrians will gain little from normalizing with Israel, which has worked to destroy their country and steal their land. Look, I'm not really sure about the people who support Jolani. There are so many. Jolani has a popular base in Syria. We're not saying overwhelming Syrian people support him, but he has a popular base and he has paid minions by Qatar all around the social media, now normalizing this narrative that it is important to strike a peace with Israel. And that if you object a peace agreement with Israel, then you want war. And these people are completely propagandists. What they're doing is very dangerous, because peace with Israel, let's accept that Israel exists, right? And you want to strike a peace deal with Israel. So you have certain preconditions or certain elements that you have to negotiate. And one of which is borders. Where are the borders of Israel? Can somebody please tell me where are the borders of Israel? Is there any, let's say, statement or an agreement or a paper or a document in Israel, a government paper, which says, this is our borders. Beyond this, we don't have territorial claims. You will not find any. So therefore, it is difficult to negotiate with a party that doesn't really set borders for itself. What about the Golan Heights? What about Al-Qunaytira? What about Syria's sovereignty? What about its water resources? And what about the Palestinians? We have 500,000 Palestinians in Syria. Do they have the right to return to their homes or not? So basically, when you negotiate with second party, you really need to have give and take, right? So what are the demands of the Syrian side under Jolani? There is nothing. They're only asking for recognition in exchange for we give you everything you want, right? This is not diplomacy. This is surrender. Complete surrender. And this comes only after what we have seen in the Gaza Strip, right? It's not like, even for cosmetics, at least, if I'm Jolani and I want to make peace agreement with Israel, at least the cosmetics, like, let's delay this until the Gaza onslaught is over, or the people little bit, forget about what happened in Gaza. But he's doing it in the middle of this onslaught against the Palestinians, whereas the Palestinians are starving there, right? And he sold all this narrative to the people that when he comes to power, he will liberate Jerusalem. And now he will go to Jerusalem, he will go to Tel Aviv, but he will go as a normalizer, as a capitulator, and not as a liberator. This is the difference. Now, one of our friends says, accept, I don't know, he says, Kevork, Syria is gone, give up. I don't know why you think that I should give up, or I should, I'm telling you the truth here. And I said on the 9th of December, 2024, when Assad was gone, I said, Syria, as we know it, is over. And I'm already over it. But don't expect me to stay silent on the new rulers of my country. I will accept and I will swallow the fact that Syria is gone forever. And for me, this is not the country that I used to belong to. I agree and I accept that. And I think that the Americans have won this war and the Israelis have won this war. But the difference is in the 48, they called it the Nakba, which is the catastrophe. In 67 defeat, they called it the Naksa, which is the setback. But now in 2024, 2025, another Nakba, another Naksa, which means another catastrophe and another setback happened, but they're calling it victories and freedom. This is the difference. So my job is to keep questioning this new regime and keep pressing this new regime and keep showing the people, especially English-speaking people, and rest assured there are people watching this channel who are influential and they're playing political roles in the US and abroad. And if that wasn't the case, I wouldn't have faced all this backlash and criticism and smearing and trying to, deplatform me and deport me from Germany, backed by powerful forces with governmental forces, right? I mean, now that we spoke about Tulsi Gabbard, for example. Tulsi Gabbard, for example, follows my work on X. And after she became the director of the national intelligence, I think, don't quote me on this, she unfollowed many people, but not me. So there are people watching this. I disagree with Tulsi Gabbard categorically on her opinion when it comes to Palestine. But when it comes to Syria, I accept what she's doing is correct. The United States should not and must not recognize, shake hands with this type of terrorist regime in Syria. So I will do what I can to raise awareness, to shape public opinion. If I wasn't successful in what I'm doing, I don't think that people would have even would not have put any effort to write articles, make videos about me, and write a Wikipedia page about me. All these things wouldn't have happened if I wasn't influential. So I accept that Syria is gone, but I also will not accept to give this terrorist regime an easy time, Good. Thank you for that. I'm happy that we agree. So as we speak about the region, Trump lands in Saudi Arabia. Qatar now wants to gift, reportedly, a plane to $500 million worth of jet to Trump. And remember, this is the same country which claims to be pro-Palestine, right? So they want to gift $500 million worth of plane to Donald Trump. And they're discussing it now in the press because they don't really know some of the legalities of it. Maybe in the US, it's not legal to accept such a gift. Anyways, and the deal is not final, guys, but ethics experts are raising concerns about the possible donation from a foreign government, which they say is unconstitutional. On Sunday, ABC News reported that Trump administration is preparing to accept the plane from the royal family of Qatar. That would be very interesting, actually, if he accepts that. So this is what Trump said when he was asked about this plane.
A couple of years while they're building the other ones. I think that was a very nice gesture. Now, I could be a stupid person and say, oh, no, we don't want a free plane. We give free things out. We'll take one too. And it helps us out. because again, we're talking about, we have 40-year-old aircraft. The money we spend, the maintenance we spend on those planes to keep them tippy top
Mhm.
is astronomical. You wouldn't even believe it. So I think it's a great gesture from Qatar. I appreciate it very much. I would never be one to turn down that kind of an offer. I mean, I could be a stupid person, say, no, we don't want a free, very expensive airplane. But it was a couple of years.
So this is the same president, guys, who only a few years ago on his first visit to the Middle East, and this was, I think, in 2017, after his first re-election. Yeah. So during my recent trip to the Middle East, he says, just a second. During my trip to the Middle East, I stated that there can no longer be funding of radical ideology leaders pointed to Qatar. Look. So he knows it. That Qatar is a very good ally of the US, strategic ally of the US. It is labeled as a major non-NATO ally. It supports the US efforts in the region to project its hegemony over the region. It helps the US. It helped the US immensely in Syria. It helps the US immensely in Gaza, by the way, to the extent that you wouldn't expect from Qatar, and the way they brainwash millions of people in the region. It's hilarious what Qatar does for the Americans in the region, including a free airbase, which is the largest American airbase in the region, and for free. The Americans do not pay a penny. The Qataris pay for everything, right? I just want to thank Philip Blair for gifting 5 Syriana Analysis memberships to our dear friends. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. For those who are watching this, if you like my commentary and my streams, I really appreciate it if you hit the like button, thumbs up, and subscribe to this YouTube channel. Thumbs up helps me with the algorithm of YouTube. Leaving a comment also helps me with the algorithm and the suppression of YouTube. And the subscription helps me hit the 100K goal, which I believe it's a long overdue. We want to hit 100K goal, 100,000 subscriptions. I have posted over 1,000 videos on this YouTube channel over 8 years. So I have put lots of effort and energy in this. And for those who don't know, in the first 4 to 5 years or more, I have gained 0 from the work that I did on Syriana Analysis, and the YouTube channel rejected to monetize my YouTube channel. I think after 5 or 6 years, they monetized it, just for you to know. So this is an article I wrote after these reports about Trump wanting to shake hands with Jolani, embrace him in Saudi Arabia, and before that, French President Macron basically met with Jolani and embraced him again. And this is what I said. And I would really, if you're on Substack, you can find me under my personal name, Kevork Almassian. There was a time when shaking hands with a non-terrorist was a political suicide. That time is over, guys. In today's upside-down geopolitical theater, the same Western powers that once vowed never to negotiate with terrorists are now rolling out the red carpet for one. His name is Abu Muhammad al-Jolani. Jolani, a former Al-Qaeda commander, is no reformer. He is not a Democrat. He's not even a unifier. He is a symbol of everything the so-called war on terror was allegedly meant to prevent. And yet, he is being rebranded and rehabilitated by governments who once claimed moral authority over Middle Eastern conflicts. Let's call it what it is. This is betrayal. Not just of the Syrian people, but of the entire public who was sold the myth of the war on terror. From Bill Clinton to George W. Bush, from Obama to Trump 101, from Biden to Trump 2.0, this is a bipartisan collapse of moral clarity. Trump shaking hands with Jolani should that photo op ever happens, would be the final insult. It would retroactively expose the last 2 decades of US foreign policy as the theater of hypocrisy. Even worse, the attempt to whitewash Jolani isn't subtle. Macron hosted him. Western media has promoted his new image, but when you scroll through the replies to official French government posts about these visits, public outrage is undeniable. This isn't just opposition from pro-Assad accounts, it is ordinary people from around the world calling out the absurdity of hosting a jihadist in a suit. Behind this PR makeover lies a horrific reality that cannot be sanitized. The beheading of civilians, the torture of kidnapped minorities, the decapitated body of an Alawite man found mutilated near the Salah ad-Din citadel. These are not isolated war crimes. They are part of a pattern of pogroms carried out by Jolani's militias against religious and ethnic minorities. And yet, NATO countries will reward him with international legitimacy. This is not counterterrorism, it is complicity. And for those who scoff and say, but Assad killed his own people, let's ask a basic question. How did over 160,000 Syrian soldiers die? Were they overcome by protests slogans? Were they showered with flowers? No. They were fighting foreign-backed militant groups armed to the teeth, groups like Al-Nusra Front, Jolani's former franchise of Al-Qaeda in Syria. The reality is, my friends, millions of Syrians supported the Syrian army not because they loved Assad, but because they feared the alternative, and they were right. That alternative is now ruling the country with Western backing. Those who resisted this weren't propagandists. They were realists. And now even some of the West's most fervent opposition figures are waking up, or anti-Assad figures are waking up. We are seeing a slow, reluctant epiphany from former activists who are finally realizing that the revolution they supported has mutated into a warlord state run by a religious fanatic. It didn't have to be this way, but Western government chose to play the short game, to destabilize, to divide, to manipulate. They failed to consider what comes after, and now they are too invested to admit their mistake. This isn't just about Syria anymore. This is about the collapse of Western liberal values. It's about the erosion of international norms of truth, of accountability. When state visits are extended to men running ethnic cleansing campaigns, and when terrorism is given a diplomatic press, it tells the world one thing: ethics are optional, power is everything. I'm tired of saying we warned you about this. We saw where it was going. We understood that political emotion and media narratives were no substitute for sober legal and moral judgment. But for years, we were dismissed as Assadists, conspiracy theorists, or worse. Now the truth is impossible to ignore. The world is rewarding a terrorist warlord, and in doing so, it is not just rewriting history, it is erasing any remaining credibility of the West's supposed commitment to justice and human rights. This is an op-ed article I published today on my personal Substack. If you like, you can find me on Substack, Kevork Almassian, guys. So, this was our today's coverage of Trump's visit to the Middle East. We will wait and see if there is going to be a meeting between Trump and Jolani tomorrow. And if that is the case, I would like to have another Syrian on the show, and let's have a chit chat about that. Let's see what our Syrians are saying and feeling, and how they perceive such a meeting. We'll definitely update you. If you like this stream, guys, please thumbs up, subscribe to this YouTube channel, and leave a comment. And if you like to support the independent work I'm doing, you can become a patron. Patreon.com/Syriana Analysis. If you don't like to use Patreon.com, there are different other means in the description below. And I will see you tomorrow, Wednesday, 14th of May, 2025. Peace be upon you, upon your families. Salam.